Okay, good evening members and welcome to the Standards Committee meeting. Any members or officers in physical attendance with an electronic device, could you please mute it to avoid feedback? Anyone online? None. The meeting may be recorded and data collected during the recording of the meeting.
Councillor Gibson's online.
He suddenly snuck in. Councillor Gibson, could you keep your camera off and your microphone muted? Thank you. Where'd I get to? Right. The meeting may be recorded and data collected during the recording of the meeting will be retained in accordance with the Council's data retention policy. The recording of the meeting may be added to the Council's website. Welcome everyone, including, there's no visiting members. Councillor Gibson is attending remotely. Welcome to Patricia Richards, one of the independent persons. In physical attendance is Robin Harris, nearly made you a rally.
No relation.
Robin Harris, Monitoring Officer. Joe Millard, Democratic Services Officer. There is no planned evacuation, so if the alarm goes off, follow me. Right, any apologies for absence and substitutes?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies have been received from Councillors Lehman, Councillor Neal and Councillor Perkin, and also from the independent person, Christopher Webb. Thank you.
Is it your wish that I sign these as a correct record? Yes. Good. Item 4, declarations of interest. Does anyone have any? No. Item 5, forward plan. Now, there are currently no items for discussion for the December meeting, and if that is the case nearer the time, I would suggest that the meeting is cancelled. I see no reason to hold a meeting for the sake of holding a meeting. By the same token, if there is a need to hold an extra meeting for a specific purpose, then I'm quite happy to do it. So are you happy with that way forward? Good. Item 6, Member Officer Protocol. Mr. Harris, would you like to introduce the report?
Thank you very much, Chairman. This is a relatively brief report, and I'll just quickly confirm that members have had the opportunity to read it and are aware of the contents of the report. I'm getting nods from around the room. Members will recall that leading up to the April Council last year, that this committee did a fairly substantial amount of work on developing a member and officer protocol, and when it was ultimately approved by Council in April 2024, it was intended that it would be reviewed after 12 months, which would of course have taken us to April 2025. However, immediately after Council approved it, there were some requests for some minor amendments to the text of it, and for one reason or another that didn't actually happen until around about December 2024, and the document actually in its final form was published in January 2025. So we're in a slightly odd situation as to whether it's actually had a year or not. Obviously it's more than a year since the Council adopted it, but it's less than a year of it actually being used in practice. In the period that it's been used in practice, which is less than 9 months, there has actually, in what I'm sure everyone would agree good news, only been one complaint by an officer against a member under the Code of Conduct, and in relation to that complaint, the member in question immediately accepted the breach, and the matter was amicably and informally resolved. And so on that basis, the member officer protocol hasn't really been tested in any reasonable way, and as such I have recommended reminded that in actual fact it's reviewed again in 12 months' time when the efficiency of the document or the efficacy of the document has been properly tested in use in practice. Well, of course, I suppose what would be ideal was actually in another 12 months' time there similarly had been no such complaints, and that we may perhaps at that point decide to leave it as it is. But very happy to take any questions on the item and to receive any steers from members on this topic.
Okay, members, we've got 2 recommendations. 1, consider whether the protocol remains fit for purpose, et al. 2, delegate authority to the monitoring officer to make any amendments. I am quite happy to propose both recommendations. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Councillor Nundy?
Yeah. How many complaints did you say there'd been?
So there's an item later on that talks about how many complaints there are in total, but complaints which this would be a relevant document for, because obviously it only relates to complaints whereby, in terms of standards, an officer has made a complaint against a member. And as I say, in the period since January 2025, there has only been one such complaint, and the alleged breach was immediately admitted. So there was no role for the protocol to play in relation to whether or not the behaviours were appropriate or not, because it was never in question. So I say the reality is the document has never been used in anger in the 9 months that it's been in place.
Right, because I'm just trying to think if it's really worth us reviewing this again in 12 months' time, if there has only been one complaint. Because if there's only been one complaint so far, well, actually, if you go 12 months and no further complaints have been made, is there merit in actually reviewing it, because it won't have been used? We'll be having this exact same conversation, if you see where I'm coming from.
I think that's an absolutely fair point. But when council adopted it, and one of the conditions was it was reviewed in 12 months' time.
Okay, fair enough.
James?
Thanks. I think the question is, which is I was going to ask anyway, was how many were there in the previous 12 months? Was there a lot more complaints just off the top of your head? You know that?
Oh, I can't tell you off the top of my head.
Okay, but I can remember quite a few. So, so I think it could be. Yeah, you hope that there isn't any need to do it in 12 months, but there could be a reason to look at it. But generally, I mean, I remember commenting on this at the time and all the work that we did, and I'm still happy with what's in there. So,
Ashley?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. And similar to Councillor Hunt, I still think it's a good document, and actually, I still think one of the strengths in it is partly how it's laid out, because I think it makes it quite a usable document. So I do think there is some merit in keeping it under review, just so that there is that option to see if anything does need to change. And obviously, as Councillor Hunt said, partly that could be dependent on what actually comes down the line in terms of, we'd hope, no further issues that will require a complaint under this. But yeah, I still think just keeping an eye on whether we think that it's doing what it needs to do, and that officers likewise are confident that it captures everything we need it to, then I'm happy for that. But obviously, hopefully, if there haven't been many or any complaints, then we can just conclude as a committee when it does come here that it's doing its job. Thank you.
Good. Would it be possible, there is a phrase which has escaped me, that when in the minutes where it will say that Mr. Harris reported that during the 9 months it's so far been in operation, there's been one, and it blah, 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 in answer to a question subsequent to the meeting, that we have the number for the previous 12 months. You can put that in the minutes subsequently. There is a phrase for it, which... Retrospective? No. It might come to me in a couple of weeks.
But
Richard?
On that point, is it helpful to put them in? I mean, you're looking at this document, and I think it's fairly simple, fairly straightforward to understand, and quite clear in its aims and objectives. I mean, I would probably go as far to say that if next year you and the monitoring officer, or the chair and the monitoring officer, looked at it and said, well, actually, there's been no complaints, we don't need to put it on the agenda. I don't know if that's feasible, as it's supposed to come back yearly, but it seems silly having something that you're just going to talk and say the same things now. Thank you.
I would actually concur with that. The fact that council asks for it to come back, if there has been absolutely none. James?
I agree with that. And I think it would be quite easy to just add on recommendation number 2 that review the protocol in 12 months' time if it has been relevantly tested, something along those lines.
Yeah.
If it's just in that way, if it's not, then it doesn't come back, and if it is, yeah, I'm happy to propose that.
Right. Yeah. Anyone got a problem with that? No? Okay. Patricia, do you want to say anything? No. Good. So are we happy that we're going to take these 2 recommendations together?
The second one hadn't been amended.
The amendment was on the second one, so we'll do that first, the amendment, which is if there's been no activity, it won't come back in 12 months. Although, right, agreed. And then the substantive recommendations 1 and 2, with that included, all in favour? Okay, unanimous. Thanks very much, members. Number 7, member development update. This was interesting. Jo, are you taking this? Lost me a bit of paper.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a report. This report's an update of training that was carried out during the civic year 23-24 and 24-25, and it outlines the action plan that the Member Development Working Group will follow in this civic year. So 2 years ago, following a member survey, the Member Development Working Group put together a schedule of training events requested by members whilst developing a member development strategy, and this was agreed at full council in October 2024. From 2023, officers recorded members' attendance at training and briefing sessions, and the attendance statistics are set out at Appendix 1, noting that not all attendance records are available. It's currently not possible to verify when a councillor has viewed a recording of a session on the members' Teams channel after the training has taken place. If you do have any questions, please ask, and I might not be able to answer them, but I will find the answer for you. Thank you.
Okay, members? Okay, while you're thinking about it, I had a question on, there was 14, page 33, the second little chart, Labour, Planning Committee seats 5, number of councillors trained on planning 14, percentage of group trained to sit on planning committee 93%, and I thought, how does that work out? Are you telling me 14 is 93%?
Of your group, yeah. And that's what Excel would round it up to or something.
Oh, well, technical.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but don't you have 15 group members? And so 14 out of 15 is 93%. That sounds not a million miles out.
Oh, okay. We'll find who it is, and it'll be 100% next time, won't it? Yeah, I was going to say, none of you three or me, yeah, we're fine, we're fine. And also, while you're thinking about it, I found it very interesting to see which groups are taking part in training and which groups aren't. Now, whether that's relevant or not is neither here nor there. There's been some really relevant training that each and every member could usefully use within their patches, and it's not been well attended. And bear in mind that most of the training you can actually do online training and briefings. You can do online now as well. I think that members are missing out, and especially with changes coming forward, where you might, you know, if that's what you want to do, you might be involved in a whole load of different areas. The more knowledge you have, the better. I've always took the view that training and development of members, we're not professionals, but we need as much help as we can, as much information, if it sinks in, that's another matter, as we can possibly get. Yeah. James?
Just ask whether what work has been done to find out why there hasn't been, especially the ones with sort of no attendance from groups and also or a low attendance, whether anyone's gone back to ask why on each one. It could be something that each group takes up and has a look at.
I don't recall, what have we got, 1, 2, 3, 4, we've got 4 groups here now. Have any of your reps come back to your groups and said, how come you and you didn't come to the training? I can honestly say from our group's point of view, it hasn't happened. Joe?
Yeah, so as you say, there is a representative from each of the groups at the Member Development Working Group, and I will feed that back to them to make sure that they are encouraging the members of their groups to attend the relevant training.
Yeah, because I think it would be helpful as well to feed that back to officers as well, because if for instance it is a time thing, I think that needs to be considered. So it does need every member really to be feeding back to whoever their rep is, so that can be fed back.
Yeah, sorry, if I can just come back on that, Chair. So the survey that went out 2 years ago, members were asked what their optimum times were, days, and that has been considered when sessions are set up. So we do know, and some of the session times did change to accommodate that, and also the fact that a lot of sessions now are before a meeting that's relevant to it, because that captures the members that will be in the building anyway. But I'll feed back what you've said.
Anyone else? Ashley?
Yeah, I think I know, and I've seen a few apologies given when people have responded to all councillors, and it often tends to be, it's difficult for scheduling these, because it either tends to be you exclude some people who will be coming to a 7 o'clock meeting after work, and therefore trying to get to 6 o'clock is quite difficult for them. I struggle with that sometimes. But equally, if you're on lots of committees, you don't necessarily then want to give up what could potentially be your only free evening that week for a separate meeting, or you may have internal meetings or parish council meetings on those days, or thinking of Faversham colleagues, Faversham Town Council, which often tends to be on Mondays, but might be good for other days. So it's a challenge for people. And obviously what these statistics then don't capture is anybody that goes back at a later date to review the briefing. So I've done that on several occasions where I've watched the briefing because it's been recorded, but I haven't been able to attend it. But obviously these don't necessarily capture that. So I think the reps going back to groups and having that conversation with them would be really valuable, because at least then the working group can capture how that is actually working in practice, because it could well be that there's other groups where their members are just watching the recordings because it's quite difficult for them to otherwise attend them. So I do think it would be quite valuable having that sort of conversation between the reps and their groups semi-regularly.
Thank you. I absolutely concur with what Councillor Wise just said. Some councillors they have full-time jobs. They can't access council emails while they're at work. They have young families. They have, I don't know, parents' evenings, concerts at the school that they have to go to. So quite often, I will catch up with online training. Sometimes it's weeks after it's happened, when I have an afternoon to myself at the weekend and think I can link my laptop up to the telly and just watch this for 3 or 4 hours, but there's no way of recording that. So would it perhaps not be pertinent for councillors, if they have watched it, perhaps to email someone someone at the council to say, just so that you know, I have actually undertaken this training, because not because there'd be any merit in it, because I could lie and say that I attended someone could lie and say they've attended absolutely everything when they haven't watched it, but it's about trying to gauge value for money and whether or not the training sessions are actually working. Is that something we could try and encourage group leaders to pass down to members of their group, that if they are retrospectively watching it, just to email someone if there's someone at the council that could take that on, just so that there was a more accurate record?
Now, I know Ashley's stuck his hand up. If I sat there for 3 hours and watched one of those training things, you better believe I'd be emailing in and saying I've done it. And whilst the officers couldn't prove what you were doing for that 3 hours, they could tell that you were online for 3 hours. If you say, I was watching that video, actually they could probably tell you that that's what you were doing. And they'd find it out. They're very good down there. I think that's actually a very good idea. I was going to ask whether I don't necessarily mean we need it, but there's 47 councillors. Every time we update things, a benefit goes. We used to be able to get a printout, press of a button, of each councillor and the percentage of briefing/training they'd attended. Can't get it now, not without some difficulty. But I know at the time I used to get my groups when I was group leader, and I would take people to one side and say, we've had 15 briefings, trainings, you haven't attended any. Is there an issue here? Is it, now they might say, but I've spent all my Sundays watching it on the thing. Because with the best will in the world, and I admit I'm guilty, I did not respond to that last survey about what days, times are most convenient to me. Not everyone did. So it's not to say, look, you're somebody's bottom of the pile, because you can have it anonymised data, 1 to 47. Just so that you can actually individualise why is there a particular problem. Now, if I go to work at 8 in the morning and finish at 6, then I just about get over to Swale House in time for my committee. I'm not going to be there for the training beforehand. Did you know that? No, you did. We do now. And it's things like that. If we really want our members to be encouraged to do this, we've got to individualise it. Not say, well, the majority of the 47 can do 6 o'clock or 6:15, so that's what we do. You've got to make sure that you try it for everyone. Ashley.
Yeah, I was going to echo in particular Councillor Nundy's point about having some merit in keeping that data, so having that option for members to say when they've retrospectively viewed something, because I think that would actually help the working group to understand what members have engaged on particularly well, and to identify where there could be other gaps in knowledge or other stuff that could be brought forward. I did have a quick question about the external training sessions, where it says, for example, the questioning, scrutiny, critical thinking, chairing skills workshops, and there was 4 of them, and it says 24 attendees. Was that 24 people attended across those 4 sessions? Yeah. I do think that's disappointing, especially as there was a cost to this training. That means, in effect, there were 6 people on average at each session. That's poor. Yeah. And there were options for that as well, because there were evening sessions and afternoon sessions, I believe. So I know that some people would have already done the chairing sessions before, and this was put on to recognise the fact that, you know, some different cohort of people had come through to do chairing and become vice chairs. But in particular on the questioning, scrutiny and critical thinking, I think that really should have been higher attendance for those. You look at the initial chairing skills for members, and there were 19 attendees at that, which could then partly explain why at the later workshops there were fewer people there, but that doesn't explain why there was low attendance at the questioning, scrutiny and critical thinking training. And I think this was something that was agreed previously, that yes, members really would benefit from this training. So given the fact that that was arranged and paid for and was low attendance is pretty poor. Thank you.
I couldn't see who it was. Oh yes, welcome Monique. I will be able to see if you put your little yellow hand up and want to speak. So what have we got? Have we got some recommendations on that, apart from noting, because this is important, and the working group is trying to do a good job, but feeding, you know, a bit of two-way communication, I think, would help. Going back to your groups, Rich.
So with that in mind, training might have been done in other places. I mean, but I've done the fresh training, but my licensing training was done by the Institute of Licensing, because every time they had a session here, I was on something else. So there are external sources, and you could do exactly the same training with another authority. I've done planning training through CALC. Maybe we should try to draw down what training people have done, because then you build up a picture of what's relevant. But then KCC don't recognise Swale's planning training, and Swale won't recognise KCC's because they have a different role in planning.
Well, actually, when I was there, they did. Well, I kicked off. But I did substitute on the planning committee, and they accepted my planning training from Swale. Yes. I hesitate to mention also in the old days, we all had a training programme. We had individual appraisals with our group leader. We had the form to fill in to say what our training needs were. And they were all fed through, and you were notified as and when training came through. But it was also any skills that you'd brought with you, any training that you'd brought with you were noted. And this council used to actually do these little A5 certificates when you completed your training. We were the best in the whole of the South East at that time. Just I'd mention that, Rich.
Going back to what Councillor Nundy said, if you watch a video, there could be a Microsoft Forms link that you just say, I've seen this video, this is the date I saw it, and that's captured into an Excel spreadsheet. So at least you've got some sort of background history if someone wants to do that.
Yeah. Ash?
Yeah, there could be a sort of evaluation form where you ask people, you know, what did you learn from this? And you only have to include one or two things, but it shows that you've given some thought to it and you've actually at least attempted to do it. There's no guarantee if someone joins a briefing or training remotely that they're not doing the washing up in the background or something, you know. So it isn't about, you know, really trying to control that people are actually doing this when it's not that sort of level of training, not licensing or planning training. But I think that could be quite helpful to have that sort of thing. I imagine officers here are the same, you know, as with my employer. There's lots of mandatory training we have to do throughout our working career, and at the end of it, you know, there is a thing where you supply some feedback about it, which is to improve the offer, but also to make sure that people are actually digesting some of this stuff as well. And I think that's a really sensible suggestion to sort of capture this. I think the working group would find that really helpful then in being able to develop the programme going forward. I know that there had been some suggestions around speed reading and public speaking as well. Whether that's something we ultimately do, bearing in mind that potentially as an authority we're still on borrowed time, you know, I think it is something that I would have thought should have been offered when not long after the elections, for people to gain some of that confidence in being able to fully participate in our meetings. But yeah, I know that is still something that had been flagged before, but I do think that suggestion is quite good to have that as a, you know, just a quite short, simple form that people could complete after they've done it, to say what briefing they've watched or whatever, and what they thought was good about it, what they thought was lacking, and can go from there.
Yes, no, we also in person, but you can do it online. When we had in-person briefings, I know Robin wants to come in. When we had in-person briefings, you were not allowed out that door without you handed in your form. It didn't have to be pages long, but you had to give your feedback form in. Robin.
Thank you, Chair. Well, the point I was going to pick up, well, actually, there's a couple of things have come around of a similar vein. So, Councillor Palmer mentioned a Microsoft form, and that was what made me put my hand up, and I'll come back to that in a second, because I think it was something that Councillor Wise was alluding to. But so, officers' online training, the system requires you to have looked at all of it, you know, slide by slide, and there are indeed also questions that you need to answer during the course of it, and some of them have questions at the end of it, which is a pass-fail. So certainly, like, you know, on that particular occasion, it's demonstrated, you know, that you paid sufficient attention to it, that you could answer the question successfully, so that you could have your mandatory training signed off. But and again, some of those things are also open to members to do as well. There are systems out there that do that give you that sort of degree of confidence. But what struck me actually in relation to the Microsoft form is that I have done emergency planning training, which is Kent Resilience Forum, which is KCC, and some of it actually requires pre-reading to have been done before the physical training. And in actual fact, it comes with a Microsoft form, and it has a small number of questions on, which I think the sort of thing that Councillor Wise was alluding to. And you obviously have to have gone into that material to be able to answer the questions on the form. So actually the spreadsheet doesn't just have that you did it, but it's actually got some questions on it and your answers to the questions, which to some extent also would demonstrate your level of knowledge. And again, it wasn't like there was 100 questions and it took you hours to do it, but there were sufficient questions that you, if you wanted to say, yes, I've done this, you couldn't, because you had to go into the materials to be able to actually answer the questions that were posed.
Joe?
Yeah, I just wanted to come back about the valuation forms. We did used to send them out or have them out, and we did used to hand them out at the door. But we found that so many just either didn't write the name or just wrote NA across it. So we stopped sending them out because it just wasn't worth doing. We didn't get any value from that.
Ashley?
Yeah, this was just more on the point that Councillor Nundy had made about, you know, showing that there's some sort of value and being proven. So the people that genuinely are going out of their way, it might not be lots of us, but at least it would be captured then in these statistics that we're getting here. If it's only 2 or 3 of us that have taken the time on a Saturday afternoon, or, you know, you've watched it on the train into work or something, then at least that can be captured. There's the option there, because I can't imagine that it suddenly is going to mean that the 23 that didn't attend that are all watching it at home and will then all complete the form. Some of them are watching it at home, some of them won't also then complete the form, but it would be captured in some of these statistics, and it may just assist the working group in knowing exactly what is being followed up if people can't attend those sessions.
There's some useful comments there. I think sometimes knowledge training is useful, but the skills training that should have been put in place for, say, 23. I'm not going to say it was COVID, because that was a couple of years before, but, less hands on deck, more work to do. But skills training should really be the start, and then you do the knowledge stuff, especially with the speed readings, advanced reading techniques we did. If you can't speed read stuff that's going like this, either in paper form or even worse online, as your eyes go, you're not going to pick things up. But yeah, I hope that there's some good comments there, Joe. The recommendation was to note. Do I have a proposer? Ashley, seconder? Char? Okay, all those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much, members. Next item is item 8, Code of Conduct Arrangements. Robin, would you like to introduce your report?
Thank you very much, Chair. And again, can I just take the opportunity to ask if members have had the opportunity to see the report and read it? By way of brief background, members may well recall or aware because of the report that between April and July last year, we made quite a lot of progress, I felt, in relation to creating a new set of arrangements that go behind the Code of Conduct in relation to how complaints are handled and investigated. However, after our July meeting in 2024, there was a lot of noise from central government in relation to potentially amendments to the standards regime, and so at that time I think it was entirely appropriate for this council to pause the work that was on that in case something were to come forward nationally as a national single standard. And indeed this council and this committee particularly contributed to the government's consultation, which occurred between December last year and February this year. This committee noted in its meeting in July this year, that however there isn't or nothing further has come forward from the government on that, and therefore asked me if I would bring forward the work that we had done previously. I shared that work in August, and obviously it's attached to this report as well. My sense was that work was substantially completed by July last year, and therefore my sense is that we are in a position actually to take the document that this committee created between April and July last year and share it with all members by way of a consultation, and unless there is substantial change, to then bring that document straight to council rather than back to here in order for it to be adopted as the council's arrangements. Although obviously members will also be aware that we currently don't have agenda items for this committee for the December meeting, and so if they were minded to want to see the results of any consultation prior to that document going to full council, then that opportunity is open to them. But my view is that the work that this committee did between April and July last year was good work. I think our previous experience of consulting with all members on matters of this nature is that, dare I say, we are unlikely to get substantial changes such as this committee would have significant work to do, but that's a judgment that the chairman is in a position to make. And so the recommendation is, in actual fact, that we agree this evening, you agree this evening, the committee agrees this evening, that this matter is consulted on next, and following that consultation it goes to full council for adoption. Very happy to take any questions.
Okay, members, so we've got 4 recommendations. Rich, propose.
Yeah, I'll propose it. It's fine. I just noticed an error, actually. It's just a typo. It's 13.1. where is it? And the council should put in place a process, I would have thought.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Which page number are you on?
Oh, page number 45, 13.1. It's just the last sentence. I've just read it and it just says the council should in place a process. It should put in place a process.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's obviously within the delegation to me to make a minor amendment, isn't it? But yeah, if these are agreed.
The more
yeah,
times you
absolutely.
read it, the more you miss it.
Absolutely, yes.
James, you seconded?
Yeah, happy to second.
Okay.
Well, I was basically going to just agree that I think it's been about for so long. It would be good to get it out to consultation now. I went over the notes that I made last time when we discussed them, and I think all the changes and that were raised then have sort of been put in there. So I think the work has been done on it, and hopefully we can get it out to consultation, make a few changes if there is any, and get it adopted. The sooner the better.
Okay, any other comments? No, with the minor amendment, I can say typo, but it's a type missing. All those in favour of the 4 recommendations, please show. Okay, that's unanimous. Great. Then we're moving on to item 9, standards complaints.
So members will recall at the previous meeting of this committee that we had an interesting discussion in relation to information coming forward to this committee when this committee sits, in order to have a sense of the number of complaints that are being dealt with at any particular time. Members may recall that there was a question about what's the average number of complaints, and I said it's really difficult to answer because it's something which it fluctuates enormously. And this brief update will give a really interesting example of that, because the quarter that we are currently in, so July, August and September, which I was briefing you on this evening, in July and August there were no complaints whatsoever, and then in September it went completely mad, and I'll try and recall, if I can, all of the complaints that we have received. But this is why I say that it's hard to get an average, because there are sometimes certain triggers, say in relation to the month of September. Say perhaps towards the end of August and the beginning of September, before, for example, the kids went back to school and people went back to work. There was a number of things that happened that were perhaps even on a national scale. People, members will be aware that there was a protest in Faversham, and various other things. And out of that, there was a sudden, how can I put it, burst of activity in relation to complaints, and so there are 4 complaints by members of the public about one member of the council, the borough council, in respect of the same issue. There is 6 complaints about members of the council by another member of the council, also arising out of a similar issue. There is a complaint by a member of the public against a town councillor, and in fact there's a further one which has only come in literally this week. So from having nothing for 2 months, suddenly we're into double figures in 1 month.
12.
And say at the moment, because we're actually still in that reporting period, and literally I've had complaints in this week, in fact as recently as yesterday, that I am actually still calculating for this month how many complaints we actually have, which is the slight disadvantage of reporting the current quarter before we reach the end of the quarter. But obviously in future meetings, the full picture from this quarter will be a little bit clearer than it is this evening. And obviously at this point it's impossible to say, and I wouldn't want to prejudge any of those complaints, whether any of those complaints are ultimately going to make their way here, because it's premature at this point to say so. But I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah. Ashley.
I don't really know if you can answer this actually, but I was going to say, is most of these complaints about social media conduct rather than physical complaints about physical in-person behaviour?
There is a mixture, but some of them relate to social media activity.
Mark.
Thank you, Chair. I just think it's good to get figures. I just think it's good to get us to understand that you are getting complaints in seasonally, and for us to understand what those may be, which wasn't there before. So I do think this sort of verbal briefing is very good.
Agreed. Thanks. Okay, no other questions then? We'll note that verbal update and move on to item 10, update on member disclosure and barring service DBS checks. Joe or Robin? Joe.
Do you want to start?
Okay, this came from Housing and Health Committee, now Housing, Health and Communities, and it was referred here. The general consensus of that committee, and indeed a large number of members of the public, is that those people who get elected, at all levels to be fair, have been checked. CRB checked, it was in the old days, now DBS checked, and are quite, I would say, surprised, horrified in some cases to find that actually, no, you don't have to, which is why we agreed that on a voluntary basis, because we felt it was very important in terms of working with the public, that we make efforts in this direction. So that's why we are where we are. Yes, it is voluntary, though we would be pressuring the minister to actually make, who are eventually going to be looking at this, these things take like forever and a day, who will be looking at the codes and the rest of it for elected members. Though to be fair, it's usually do as I say, not as I do, because if the general public are surprised that local councillors don't have to be checked before they can stand for election, they'd be absolutely horrified to find that MPs don't. Anyone can put themselves up to be an MP and don't have to be checked. And let's be fair, some of the things that come out generally after they died, to be fair. But no, these days, if you want to be a volunteer in a hospital or a volunteer in a school or a volunteer in a prison, you've got to have a DBS check. But I can be an elected official and, council, county council, member of parliament, and, go here, there and everywhere and not have to worry about it. So that's why it actually came up from the committee that actually we should be pursuing this. And the general view of the members was that this was a good idea to pursue. Democratic Services do keep writing out and saying, do you need any help? And I know some members did need a little bit of help. And hopefully we're getting near to where we need to be. So, Joe, have you got an update on that?
Thank you, Chair. So I can give you an update that out of the 47 members that we have, 39 have provided evidence of a DBS check. There are some groups where all of the members of the group have provided that evidence, and there are other groups where there's one or two that have not as yet. I have got the group's names, but I don't want to give them out unless you want me to.
Well, I think we should, because we had the groups at the last meeting. We know that the independent group, if that's the right word, was 100%. Well done, Mike. Could you read them out then, Joe? Number of members and those who've done it.
Okay. So for the Labour group, all 15 have given theirs in. For the Conservative group, there is one that has not, but that's potentially down to a health issue. The SIA group, 6 have given theirs in, so there's 2 that haven't. Liberal Democrat group, 3 have given theirs, so 2 have not. Reform UK, 3 have given, 2 have not. Greens, 2 have given, 1 has not. And as you say, the Independent has given theirs in. Thank you.
Okay, so where are we going to go from here, members? Rich.
If it's possible, if Joe can, I don't know if I've seen an email coming in saying 2 of your members haven't got this, and I could take it up with them. It might be that they don't know how to do it, and I will go around and show them.
Thank you, Chair. So we haven't pinpointed individuals, rang them up in such a way. We have sent out reminders to all that haven't, but it doesn't say, dear Councillor Smith. So, but those members that haven't have had reminders. But I can certainly let the group leaders know who the people in their group who have not, and let them chase.
I'm just going to ask on, because you're very hot on this data protection, but if they sign up to your group, they've signed up to, yeah. And I think sometimes people don't like to admit that they're finding it difficult to do it.
Yeah, some people don't know how to go onto the computer to even just log in.
Yeah. If we're happy with writing to the group leaders. Charles, you want to say something?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Obviously, Robin will know more about it than me, but from my understanding, the reason you can be an elected official and not be checked is because of the Offenders Act, 1974. From what I understand, only certain professions you can request forcefully, kind of. So I just think we need to be a bit careful stating about consequences, like I know some members have mentioned before, naming and shaming, etc. Just whether we are still complying with the Offenders Act. Thanks, Chair.
So, Councillor Harrison made the point earlier on that this is a voluntary scheme here because the occupation of councillor is not covered by the 1974 Act, and so it is not a requirement that you need to provide one. I think previously this matter went to council, did it not? And council determined, with this committee being the body who would, arbiter the scheme, that the councillors of this council would, although it's down to individuals voluntarily, submit to having a basic DBS check carried out. And I suppose that, ultimately it could be reported back to council that the people who had not volunteered to do so had not volunteered to do so. But the starting point of that would obviously be an exempt report because it is personal data, and you'd have to decide, and it might be one for council to decide whether or not it felt that that was a matter which was in the public interest for it to be in the public domain rather than remain exempt.
Yeah, thank you.
At the end of the day, it is voluntary, although I think it shouldn't be. But I'm working on it. All the while, chase, I would rather... well, Robin, I am not going to do it full stop, so don't keep asking me, right? End of story. For my own personal... I don't know, views, whatever. I have done it, by the way. In fact, mine was the first one to go in. Yours was probably second. If you know people point blank are not going to do it, but at least you know people point blank aren't going to do it. But, we need to get to that stage where we know. Ashley?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you that I think the government should just make a call on this and say, actually, I think all elected officials at the point of election, they have this check, whatever. And it would just clear all this up. But part of the reason why I also support that is because really it should be then under that scheme, it's then paid for and it's all done. I know that members can claim it back, but actually that is a barrier. I'm not saying it's necessarily a barrier to any of our members, and I wouldn't wish to speculate, but there is an upfront cost that has to be paid, which can be claimed back, and therefore that's an administrative thing that puts people off, and there is actually a financial thing as well, and therefore that's why it should remain, you know, not that we can compel people, but I would just be, you know, wary about sort of trying to name and shame in that regard, and would like to pursue it if people want to through groups. And then obviously it would be a matter for council to decide further, because they were the ones that requested this committee take it forward. But you know, it is another thing that's worth bearing in mind, is that we are asking people to pay for something which then they can aim back, which always complicates things a little bit more, whether it's administratively or financially. But yeah.
James.
I was just wondering, is there a way that it can be done on behalf of a councillor? Is there anything that the council can do? 'Cause I think sometimes when you go to a company or somewhere else, I'm trying to think of an example. I think for schools, for instance, you go into a school, it's a school that can go and do the check, not the actual individual. So there could be something, if that is a struggle for people, that it's done in a different way.
There are a number of organisations. Sometimes when you do things yourselves, it does take longer. When we did it at the county council, literally you were sat at the machine because they'd made arrangements with whoever, and you went and logged in, put a couple of bits of info in and pressed submit, and it went the way. Ditto when I did mine for Medway Hospital. Medway Hospital had, oh yeah, well, here's the system, you just log in here and do it, as opposed to a completely separate private, I presume private sort of company that the Democratic Services found us. I've got Mark and then Richard.
Thank you, Chair. It's just really a bit of clarification, really. Can't we as a council make it our policy that members get checked? And I think that's something we should consider, because if we as a council say, if you become a member, you will be police checked, it means that anybody who's likely to apply who may not think they want to be police checked won't necessarily want to be a member or stand for election. So I do think we've talked for this now since, last couple of years, and I do think the CRB checks is an excellent thing to do. If we all think it's that good, then maybe we should be looking at making a policy to full council to let that happen.
Robin.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so just to repeat what I said earlier, so this council, I think, has voted that it will ask members to do a DBS check, a basic DBS check, in the interest of being transparent with the public about people's record. However, because it is the law that only certain professions, occupations have to do the check, can't make it mandatory, because we'd be putting in a requirement that was actually contrary to the law. So we could be challenged by a member on our own unlawful policy that we're requiring them to do something that the law doesn't require them to do. So that's the lacuna which I say that Councillor Harrison and Councillor Wise has referred to, saying it would just be better if the government sorted this out and made elected officials at all levels be required to submit to a DBS check. But I'm not aware that that's something that's on the current legislative horizon.
I'd just come back on that. I understand that's a law and I understand the situation. If we as a council say that's our policy, if members don't do it, members don't do it, but it flags it. It then says, why aren't you doing this? If you want to be open and transparent, why aren't you doing this? I'm not saying we can make people do it, but if we were to say this is Swale Borough Council's policy for members, then we should do it.
Yeah, go on.
And that, I think, is actually where we are now, is that the overwhelming majority have now complied, and we are just in a situation whereby we are confirming effectively whether or not the situation that Councillor Palmer has alluded to, that perhaps they the remaining councillors may need some assistance doing it, or the situation that Councillor Wise has alluded to, that it's an issue with the cost, or the issue that Councillor Harrison has alluded to, which is they're just not going to do it. And I think that as we sit here now, we don't know which of those situations or another situation we haven't thought of apply in relation to that very small number of councillors that haven't yet complied with it. And I think that this committee is effectively leading towards let's just drill down onto that point, and if ultimately at the end of it we end up still with a small number of members that haven't complied, then you're looking that this committee would potentially send a report to council with the names of those people and saying these are the people who haven't complied, and then council will decide what to do with that list of people.
Rich?
Yeah, all they're being asked to do is the basic. So anyone can request a basic DBS, the enhanced and I can't think what they're called now, but the enhanced and standard, you have to follow quite strict procedures. As an employer, you enter their details into a terminal that you log on to. They will get an email and then they fill in their bit. The request for a DBS is a personal request. So if you wanted a job as a care assistant in a nursing home, the employer would fill in your date of birth, email address, other bits. The care worker would receive an email. They would then log on and do the fill in the bits that they need. The DBS will come back to them, and all the care agency would get, or the care home would get, is this is the relevant information found out about this person, or no relevant information. So we couldn't fill it in because you wouldn't have all the details. I think you're on dodgy ground. It's a basic check. Most people can do it, but obviously, and it might be just sometimes you just don't get round to doing it.
We started this after the term started. I had been giving some consideration, and then the government changed my plans to. You can, in the last year of a civic term, you can make a policy decision, and you can say, right, for future terms of office, right, and the term of office was going to be 27, right, for everyone who becomes a councillor as of May 27, you will be required to have a DBS check. We will set it up like that, as opposed to just here's a web address, go and get it done. And then they would know that if they were putting themselves up for election, that was what would have to happen. You can make it mandatory, because we did on the county. And I know some people didn't put their names forward to stand because of that. Having said that, then the government did change my plans, and I'm actually wondering whether it's something which this council should be putting forward for the new council, whatever that new council may be, in that last year, because, or not that last year, the year before, because the new council, like county, will have responsibility for children. Now, you could argue that we don't have anything to do with children, may I, because, they're all about us in our patches. But county council has responsibility for children. They do have, and obviously older people. We mix with older people all the time. How we as elected officials are not considered, well, we're considered harmless, I suppose, but it's quite wrong. So my view would be that all the new councils, that should be a requirement for anyone who's putting their name forward for that to sit on whatever the new council is, because you be like certain people in a sweet shop, wouldn't it? Rich.
I was going to say you're right, but once it goes unitary, if it goes unitary in 27, 28, 29, 30, whatever, then because of the parenting, the corporate, you would be a corporate parent, then there's the legal requirement to adopt and take on an enhanced DBS check, working with children. So that would solve itself by 20 whatever if it happens.
Well, no, except for some reason, and I don't know why. 21 intake. When officers queried when this first came up at Swale, and officers asked KCC what they did, they said, "Oh no, it's not mandatory." Well, I'm sorry, but there was a policy agreed at the county council meeting, which said this is the policy for the last year of the term, which was in 2008. For the last year of the term, it will be voluntary. But as of the term, anyone elected from May 2009 onwards, it will be mandatory. And it wasn't just a standard, it was an enhanced DBS check, or CRB check actually. Now, for some reason, either somebody doesn't remember the policies that were agreed, fortunately I do, or they've changed it, but it was mandatory on every county council to say when you were called in for your training, that very first induction day, you were sat in the room with the computers and you did your CRB check. So, and that's how it needs to go back. Ashley, you were next.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't know, we'll bring this to a close or what, but I think if we're going to ask that it just goes to group leaders, I think part of it just needs to be recording whether any of these members that are yet to have one, whether they intend to or not, just for whatever reason. Just that needs to be something that then gets reported back. No, I'm not going to do it, or and this is the reason why, and then that group leader can hopefully support them or help to get them that support to do it, because it can just be as simple as not getting around to doing it, or not getting around to even shared the outcome of it. But if it's just a simple case that these members have no intention of doing it, then it just saves at least constantly chasing them, and then this committee will know, and then can decide whether something goes further to full council or not. But then that can be debated at that point.
I keep turning it off when I'm going to cough. We've made a number of suggestions, which Joe has got down, so we'll agree those. I hope you remember what they were, and welcome the updated report from Joe, and that will all go in the minutes, won't it, those numbers? Good. All agreed? Good. And then in fact, the last one, recruitment of independent persons. We discussed this, and then it went to council, and they asked for us to look at it again. Patricia is one of the independent persons. If you would like to leave, you're more than welcome to stay. But if you'd like to leave, please feel free. And don't go outside on your own. Yeah. And thanks for coming. Yes, full council said, Standards Committee, look at this again. I know we looked at it. I know we read our papers because members made comments, but council wants to look at it again. See if we want to investigate, go out to advertisement to see if there's anybody in the offing that might be interested in doing it. And what else was there, Robin?
I think that was it, actually, Councillor Harrison. I think, so council extended the existing independent persons for a further 12 months, so that we continue to have independent persons, which is important because it's a legal requirement that we have independent persons. And then effectively sort of gave a steer to this committee in order to make a determination as to the exploration we might make to see the possibility about recruiting additional or further independent persons should such folks be available. I don't know if should I sort of carry on in relation to a chain of thought. So I know from when we advertised here and when we have advertised at Maidstone and Tunbridge Wells that on account of this being a quite nebulous role that people don't understand and it carrying a relatively modest special responsibility allowance, that you spend more on the advertisement than than the person that you then pay for the people who become independent persons, which is a slight oddity, and that it is not necessarily something which is widely applied for. My recollection in relation to we appointed the only 2 applicants we had for this council on the previous occasion, and I think my recollection is that Maidstone appointed the only 2 people they had, and since that time one of them has resigned, so they only have 1. And Tunbridge Wells, my recollection is that they appointed the only 1 person who applied for it. Now that doesn't mean that we shouldn't necessarily spend the money and see if there's people out there, but there is a danger that is money poorly spent, given the experience of ourselves and others in relation to trying to appoint these posts. They are not easy to appoint to. So I wondered if there was some merit in, before we spent money on an advert, given that we do have a period of time in which to make a progress on this matter, that I could approach the other independent persons in Kent and see if they would be interested and also be our independent person, and then potentially, if there was that level of interest, then have the pool of whatever candidates come forward from a group of people we know are potentially willing and able to do the role, and see if we can appoint someone from that group, and if that process was not successful, then accept that if we want to have different independent persons, then we would need to go to advert and to see what we could do in order to attract further candidates.
Thoughts? Mark?
Thank you, Chair. I was going to say, I think it's a good idea to approach other people we know who's doing the role. I don't think we should be wasting money on a spurious advert which we may not get no response to. At least if you approach people with like-minded situations, then we may get a panel of 3 or 4 other people.
James?
Yep, I agree with that. I think if we do an advert, even if it's something just put on Facebook, just put on the social media, and do we still do our magazine? I can't remember if we still do that or not.
Yeah.
Stick it in there, stick a post on Facebook. It's not going to cost much, and it's advertised it. Ticked all the boxes, I'd say, and hasn't cost any money.
Anyone else? Ashley?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy with that approach. So how is it usually advertised? What is the usual process? I'm just curious to know who would normally have sight of, would you like to be an independent person? And also just wondered, we don't obviously have a calc rep at the moment, so that's slightly different, but I was just curious to know whether that post is going to be filled.
Joe, calc?
Yeah, I can't answer the calc one. It's vacant at the moment. They are waiting to appoint a new chair, and then the calc rep for Swell for this will then be appointed. It's hopefully very soon, but it wasn't in time for this meeting, unfortunately.
And in relation to the advertisement, it's treated like a job, and there is a role description, and there is information about it. And previously, adverts have been published in the local press and in various places, quite far and wide in some regards, in order to try and get a wide range of people who may or may not be interested in the role. But say the previous experience is that even though best efforts have been made in relation to widely advertise the roles, there has not been a surplus of candidates.
Okay, so the suggestion from Robin is that we look at the pool of people already in Kent, plus from James that we stick something in Swell News.
I suppose it might as well, if you're not going to get anyone to apply anyway, might as well do it at the same time. At least then, if you're going through the process of looking through people, if there is anyone else, it's all just done at the same time. Don't have to be choosing, but it's just an advertising with doing it softly than going out for a whole full thing that's costing money.
Full page in the FT. Oh, that's what they've been doing in the past, I can tell you now. Yeah. Mark?
Just really to come back to that, surely it's just as simple to put some form of advert on the website. That's not going to cost us anything just to put something there. If people are interested and to follow this link or find this out, rather than posting anything just on social media.
Yeah, that's good thinking. Yeah, because it said investigate.
I mean, there might be other organisations we can contact as well. CVS might be able to send it out to their people on their books. And that's an email round, isn't it? Rather than an advertisement.
If I could just come back on that. When I have tried to recruit for other similar things before through CVS, and I haven't had much of a response, but we can go down that route.
Ashley?
Yeah, I was sort of avoiding this because I was happy with the approach of just going out first, and then if we'd actually wanted to, because that didn't work, then we discuss what's actually involved with this. But, you know, I suppose there's certain voluntary bodies where people are already minded in that sort of way that could be interested. I'm thinking of like governing bodies and things like that. But I don't know what sort of network exists. I can think of other places where I've worked before where those boroughs, normally in London, have quite extensive networks organising school governors, which I don't think really exists down here. But that, you know, it's that sort of is where we're looking at, but I was sort of avoiding making that point because I was quite happy to just go out to the existing ones first. But I think there's more thought that could go into who are people that are minded to take this sort of role seriously and be interested in it and, you know, maintain an interest in it. Because also we don't want to appoint people, as you've said, then just resign as well after a period of time because, you know, they've done one meeting and actually it's not really for me.
Okay, so what about we agree to go down the route that Robin has suggested, full stop. If that doesn't elicit anything, we look at and then we would look at the website, the news thing. There is a website for professional. Brain's gone. We've had them for when you need people for your independent persons for your housing association boards. I can't. And there is a phrase for that particular site. I did ask somebody once, and they said, "Oh yeah, you mean X?" Well, I should have written it down because it's gone. But there are websites where, and that's where they all go for their independent persons, for the housing associations, for hospital trusts and all that sort of thing. There was an actual, nationally typed website. Pity I can't remember what it is, isn't it? This is all getting old, does to you? Robin.
So, obviously, this isn't a report. It was really just a sounding board type session. So I've heard what you said, and if you're happy for me to go away and to see what progress I can make with a view to what you have said to me this evening, and then I also will report back to you at a future committee. If that's
yeah. And what we haven't done is agreed to spend any money. Are we agreed on that?
I noted that the free options were the ones that were being explored.
Good, all agreed on that. Great. Okay, members, well, that is the last item. So we'll add the 30 seconds that I'm slow, and I'm declaring the meeting closed at 7:18.